Assalamu alaikum all. Welcome back to our discussions. We have discussed about the term performance appraisal. So after appraising the performance of an employee, then we need to provide compensation or the service and benefits for that particular employee. So in our today's sessions, we will discuss about these other issues. So for discussing these issues, I'm just sharing the slides so that you can have a check in which particular areas we are going to explore in today's particular session. So for that particular reasons, I'm just trying to share the screen for today's class. So I'm just trying to make it a bit large so that you can have a check about the quick review of the last class. So here it is, the quick review of the last class. So in the last class, we have discussed the very important areas of human resource managers activities. So that was about the performance appraisal activities. And for that performance appraisal, first we need to know the concept of performance appraisal and the difference of performance appraisal with performance management. Okay, so in that particular sessions, I have said that the difference between performance appraisal and performance management is performance appraisal is just focusing on three different activities of setting the standards and then evaluating the performance of an employee and finally giving feedback to that particular employee, okay, whether he has done all the activities correctly or not. On the other hand, performance management, these sort of activity actually focuses on the organizational strategic goal. So whenever the employee performs concentrating on the strategic goal of the organization, it actually gives us the sense of performance management. So that's what the thing is. And then we have also discussed about the term SMART goal. And in that particular terms, we have said that we can say that the goal is very smart whenever it will contain the required attributes for having a smart one. It is basically a term that denotes about specific, measurable, attainable, then relevant and timely. So if a particular goal contains all those qualities or all those attributes, then we can say that this particular goal is very smart. And then we have also discussed about the different methods of performance appraisal. So in that particular area, what we have said that there are different sort of methods that we can apply for performance appraisal. So it is like graphic rating scale, it is like a 360-degree method, or it is like management by objectives, critical incident methods, ranking methods. So there are different sort of performance appraisal methods, and organization can follow depending on the requirements for that particular organization. So there are different sort of methods that we have discussed in the last class, but the organization will decide which particular method they will follow. And finally, what we have discussed, the duty of the performance appraisal. I mean, who will actually perform the duty of appraising the employee's performance, whether the immediate supervisor, or there will some other third party, or there will be some other parties that will come from the outside and they will take the responsibility of doing that. So it will be decided by the organizations again, but the basic role has been played by the immediate supervisor, as this particular person has a direct connections with that particular employee. So that was the discussions of our last class. So I'm just checking whether that particular things are being recorded or not. Yes, the things are recording. So I'm just sharing the slide again so that you can check about these other issues. So now we are going to the actual oceans of our journey, about which particular area we are going to explore today. That is about the very important terms, and it is about our actual thing, that is our compensation. So we will discuss about that particular area of compensation. So again, I'm making it a bit large so that you can have a check in which particular area we are going to explore today. So yes, that is the terms compensations. So that's what we are waiting for, having the strategic decisions regarding these particular issues of compensation. So now we are going to the learning outcomes as usual, but yes, I'm showing it to the slides, but I'm not going to explain it right at this moment. Before completing all those issues very clearly, then I will come back to that particular area so that I can check, or we can check, that whether we have completed these other issues or not. Okay, so that's are some learning outcomes for that particular chapters, and hopefully we will be able to gather or understand these other issues very rightly from our discussions today. So we are going to discuss the very basic areas of our compensations concepts. So the compensation, what do we actually mean by these terms? What is the difference by compensations with salary? Are they same, or are they similar, or does there have any connections, or is there have any difference? Yes, the thing is very simple, that salary is just the financial return that an employee gets from the organization. I repeat, salary is just the financial return that an employee gets from the organization. On the other hand, compensation is the combination of different sort of financial and non-financial return. Yes, the financial return can be direct, financial return can be indirect. On the other hand, the organizational employees is enjoying some sort of indirect financial benefits as well. So the combinations of all those ingredients or the elements is basically connoting us the sense of compensation. That means compensation contains all the direct and indirect financial benefits that an employee receives from the organization. Why he receives it from the organizations? Because of his working attributes or because of his working performance. So that's the reason why the employers or the organization provides compensation to the employee. But what is the basic difference between salary and compensation? Salary denotes only the financial return that the employee gets. On the other hand, compensation always look after all the direct and indirect financial benefits to the employees. So compensation contains the sense of salary, but salary does not always give us the sense of compensation. So compensation is something more than salary. So that's what the basic concept of compensation is. I think the concept is very clear to you, and probably you might have a very good understanding about these terms, as many of you are working in different sort of organizations. Okay, now the question is, why the compensation or rewarding strategy is very required for the organization? That is the basic issues that should be discussed. Yes, compensation is very required for the organization because the employee always desires for it. The employee always wants for it, and they actually come to the organizations for getting compensation, because they are working from day to night, and they are working from their hard paced. So for getting compensation, they are showing their performances. That's the basic reasons why people work. And for satisfying all the human requirements, he needs to have money, and he expect or she expects that he will get this sort of money from the organization as he is showing his performance for the organizations, and as he is doing all the activities for achieving the organizational goal. So that's the basic linkage of a human requirements and the rewarding strategy. So as a HR personnel or as a HR manager, what we'll have to do, that is, we need to concentrate that it is our responsibility to satisfy all the employees so that they can put their efforts as much as they can for the organization. So here in this slide, we are showing the alignment of reward strategy. So the HR or the compensation managers, along with the top level management, creates the pay policies that are consistent with the firm's strategic aims. That means the employers, they will have a certain goal, and the employees, they will also have a certain goal. And it is the duty of HR management to make a link between these two goals so that both the parties can feel that we are in a win-win situations. We are providing something to the organization, and organization is also providing something to us. If both the parties feels like that, then it will be a complete sense of compensation. So that's the basic focus of our reward strategy as an HR manager. So now in that particular slide, what we are experiencing the different sort of ingredients that we need to concentrate while developing the pay policy. Okay, as I have said, it is the responsibility of HR departments to concentrate on the pay policy and develop the pay policy. So while they are going to develop the pay policy, they need to concentrate on some very specific areas. It is like pay for performance, it is like pay for seniority, pay cycle, salary increment over time, paid and unpaid leaves, salary compressions, and geographic cost of living differences. Now the questions is why they need to think about these issues. The answer will be very straightforward. Whenever we are going to discuss each one by one, then you will be clear about these particular questions, why they need to think about these particular areas. First of all, that is pay for performance. What does it mean? It means that the employees always expect that he or she will be given the output as he or she has given the input. So as much as they have performed, it is their expectations they will get return from the organization. So that is the basic sense of pay for performance. That means the employee always expects that they will get the fullest return from the organizations. And if the organizations can satisfy that particular issue, that is called pay for performance. Number two is pay for seniority. Whenever a particular employee joins in an organization, he or she might have a very little sort of expectations, but as the time goes, he or she expects a lot of service and benefits from the organizations. That's the human nature, and that's why the organization needs to provide different sort of benefits and services based on his experience or based on her experience. So that is the basic concept of pay for seniority. So apart from the basic salary, we need to provide some sort of short-term and long-term benefits. So that is the basic requirements that should be dealt with the human resource departments. And another very important thing that we are going to discuss, that is the pay cycle. Whenever an employee turns his particular activity in different circle or in different areas, he expects that the organizations will value it. The organizations will give return to that particular activities. So it is from the organizational employees point of view, and the HR departments needs to look after these other issues. Whenever a particular employee is coming to the organizations, he needs to explore different areas of the organizations, and whenever he is exploring the different areas of the organizations and keeping his experience, at that time HR departments needs to look after that particular pay cycle. That means the HR departments needs to develop the pay cycle or the pay amount in a way so that the employees can feel that we are exploring in different areas, and that's why we are being getting return from that particular areas. So that's the basic concepts of our pay cycle. And then we are going to discuss also about salary increment and the promotion issues. So the salary increment is basically the kind of expectation from the employee's point of view, that they expect that their salary will be increased after a period of time or after an interval. So if they experience that they are getting or enjoying these other issues, then it gets the fullest sense among the employees that yes, the organization is considering about our development, about our personal development. So it is their core requirements from the organization. And I can give an example of that particular issues. You have seen or you have heard about this particular issues that the banking industry or the banking sector of our country, they are ensuring the one or two incremental issues within a particular year. And that's the reason why many younger people are trying to have their fascinations on that particular industry. So that is because of their salary increment, and that is because of their promotional growth or promotional facilities. And there are other issues like overtime. So whenever the employees are giving more time to the organization, they expect that the organizations will also think about that particular issues. And in that particular slide, we are also experiencing paid and unpaid leaves. salary compression, geographic cost of living experience. So paid and unpaid leaves, this is another terms that needs to be concentrated while developing the pay policy. And salary compression, yes, this is a very new terms. Probably we might have not a very clear idea about it. So I'm going to explain it a bit more so that you can have a proper understanding about it. Salary compression is basically a kind of concept that is giving us the sense that the older employees or the experienced employees sometimes feel that we are getting or we are being paid less than the new employees. That means experienced employees sometimes feels that we are getting low payment compared to our younger parts. Why they think like that? Because whenever they have joined in the organization, probably they might receive 25,000, 30,000 or 40,000 in their entry level. But in the same entry level, in the same positions, after 10 years or after 20 years, when a new employee joins in that particular area, he might get 1 lakh or 1,20,000. Now they can think that why we have received 25,000 for that particular entry positions and the new employees are getting 1 lakh or 1 lakh plus. So that is because of the inflations. So the society experiences high cost of living as the day goes or as the time goes. So the organization or the HR department needs to concentrate on that particular issues. That after 20 years, the things will not go same as today. So whenever the HR departments or the organizations tries to compile this concept with the younger generations or with the new entry level, at that time the experienced employee might feel like that, and that is the concept of salary compression. So it is the responsibility of HR department to think about that particular issues of salary compression, because the experienced employee are the resources for that organization. So there should not be given any message that they are getting some sort of low payment from the organization. So whenever we are going to develop, these are the issues for the younger generation or for the new employees of our organizations who are joining right at this moment, we need to also concentrate on the experienced employee service and benefits so that they can feel relaxed for our organizations. Okay. So the last thing that we are going to explore from that particular slide, that is geographic cost of living differences. That is a very important thing that needs to be concentrated while developing the pay policy. Now the question is, what is geographic cost of living differences? Yes, whenever a particular organization is operating its business activities or its fundamental activities in Dhaka or in Chuadanga, at that particular time, the organization needs to concentrate these particular issues of geographical differences, because the cost of living in Dhaka and the cost of living in Chuadanga or Chapainawabganj or some other remote areas of Bangladesh is not same. So in that particular sessions or in that particular pay policy development, the HR department needs to deal with that particular issues. So the employees who are residing in the metropolitan areas or the city areas, their cost of living is very high compared to those other people who are living in the villages. So at that particular time, they need to give some sort of extra benefits to that employees who are residing in metropolitan areas. So if the organization or the HR departments think with that particular issues, that is basically the concept of geographical cost of living differences. So it also needs to look after while developing the compensation policy for the organization. So these are the factors, these are the areas what we need to concentrate while developing the compensation package for the employees. Okay, that is very important part what we are going to explore right at this moment, that is about equity. And what do we mean by this terms equity? Sometimes we regard for equality, we should have equality, men and women, they should enjoy equality. But I personally feel that people should ask for equity, not equality. Now the question is, what is the difference between equality and equity? Equality actually means that all are same. On the other hand, equity means that all are not same, but people should be provided based on their merits. So that's the basic difference between equality and equity. That means equality is suggesting that all people are same, but equity is suggesting that all people are not same, but they are unique, they are different. So they should be paid based on their merits. They should be paid based on their performance. They should be paid based on their skills and experience. So that's the basic connotations of equity. So we should regard about equity, not equality. Okay, so there are differences between men, there are differences between women. So we need to concentrate these particular issues of equity while developing the pay policy for the organization. Now the question is, what are the different forms of equity that we need to consider in case of developing compensation package? Yes, there are different sort of equity, or there are different parameters of equity that we need to concentrate while developing the pay policy. First one that we are experiencing from this slide, that is external equity. Now the question is, what is external equity? External equity means while developing the pay package for the employee, we need to compare it with the competitors' organizations. I mean, whenever we are opening or we are giving a circular for getting a marketing executive for our organization, and we are fixing the pay rate for that particular position, at that time we need to compare it with the other organizations' pay rate. Why we need to do that sort of activities? Because whenever a particular employee is joining in our organization, he or she will always try to compare it with the other competing organizations. Okay, it is a human nature that they will always do it. There is no problem with that particular concept. So whenever the employee will feel or experience that they are getting low payments compared to the other competing organizations, they will be very frustrated. So we need to concentrate on that particular issues, that we need to compare our positions payments with the other competing organizations same positions of payment. Okay, that's what happens into the private sector of our country. So different organizations are paying different amounts for the same titles of jobs, for the same titles of activities. So we need to concentrate on the external equity. Now the question is our second building block, that is internal equity. So internal equity is another very important part that we are going to discuss. That is, whenever we are going to fix the pay rate for the employees, we need to compare it with the different layers of the organizational hierarchy. I mean, whenever we are going to fix the payment for a particular employee, we need to compare it with the other layers of the organization. That means we need to concentrate that which particular areas the person have the expertise, and what sort of activities that person is actually contributing to the organizations. So depending all these sort of considerations, we need to develop the pay rate, and this particular pay rate should be compared with the other different layers of the organizations. I can give you an example that in case of an academic institutions, there are different sort of people within that academic institutions. So there might have the people, they are actually performing the role of faculties, I mean the faculty's job, or there are administrative people. There will have also the staffing requirements for the organizations, and there will have some other peoples who will actually take the role of daily management. So there will be different category and there will be different layers of their activities. So whenever we are going to fix the pay rate for different category, we need to compare it with their actual experience, with their actual job responsibilities. Because if we pay the same amount to all the categories of people, they will be frustrated. So we need to compare that in which particular areas they are actually showing their expertise, and the types of skills that we require for that particular job. And depending on all these considerations, we need to develop his or her particular compensation benefits. So that is internal equity. That means in that particular area, we are not comparing the particular person's pay rate with the other competing organizations, what we have done in external equity. But in internal equity, what we are doing, we are just comparing his payment to the other different layers of the same organizations. Okay, so that's the basic concept of internal equity. Our third step or our third particular focus, that is individual equity. Now the question is, what does it actually mean? Individual equity means while we are going to develop the compensation package for our employees, we always need to concentrate that all the peoples in a same department, they should not be frustrated with that particular issues that they are getting low payment compared to the other person. Say for example, in a marketing department or in a finance department or in a production department, there might have 5 people. Okay, so these 5 people should be paid equally if they have the same job responsibility, if they have the same job experience, if they have the same skills requirements. So if they are given a bit more compared to the others or a bit less compared to the others from the same departments, they will be very frustrated. So we need to also concentrate on that particular issues, that while we are going to develop the pay rates for the employees, we need to think that whether they are coming from the same departments, from the same responsibility areas, and from the same skill requirements as well, while we need to develop our compensation policy. Okay, and the final thing, that is procedural equity. It is nothing but it is just the checking whether we have done all the previous activities well or not. I mean, we have done about external equity, we have also performed about internal equity, we have also concentrated about individual equity. So procedural equity is always suggesting that whether we have done all those previous activities correctly or not. So if there is any deviation, we need to develop or we need to modify it in that particular segment. So that is the basic focus of procedural equity. That means this particular equity is concentrating on the process of evaluating external equity, internal equity, and the individual equity. So that's the basic building blocks from where we're getting experience that how can we concentrate on that particular terms of equity. So that was the discussions from that particular slide. Now we are going to the actual options of our journey regarding this chapter, and this is the soul of this chapter. This is the heart of this chapter as well. So this is very important part of our today's discussions, and probably there might have a questions in our final exam from this particular part, I guess. So now we are going to discuss about these issues one by one. So what particularly this slide is giving to us, or what particular message is sharing this particular slide to us? The actual message from this particular slide is that there might be a question from your final exam, or in your final exam, the question might be like that. What are the issues or what are the process that we need to follow while developing or while establishing the pay rates for the employees? I repeat, the very simple question, how can we establish pay rates for our employees? How can we establish pay rates for our employees? And this particular slide will give us the sense of that particular question. Okay, now the basic area, the basic task of human resource manager or the HR departments, that's to concentrate on the development or the establishments of pay packages for the employees. So the first step from where we are going to start our discussions about this particular question, that is salary survey. So there is a particular phrase which has been given the bold area or the deep color that you can see from the slide of step number 1, salary survey. So first, what we need to do for developing the pay package for our employees, we need to develop a salary. And for developing this salary, we need to always concentrate on a survey. That's what we have discussed in the external equity. So in external equity, what I have said that external equity is considering or comparing our payment with our competitors. And that's the basic focus of salary survey. Survey means for what? Survey means collecting data that words we require. And whenever we are attaching the terms salary with the term survey, that means salary survey, it is suggesting obtaining or collecting information regarding the salary, about what particular amount are being paid by the other competing organization. Okay, so that's the basic task that we need to do. And in the next slide, we will discuss about it a bit more so that you can have a clear understanding about salary survey and how can we do that. But in that particular slide, I'm going a bit quick so that you can have a check about these 5 steps, and then we can make it detailed in our processing slides. So the second step or the second task that we need to do as an HR manager, that is evaluating the job or job evaluation. So after comparing our payment with our competitors, I mean external equity, the second particular equity is internal equity. That's what we have seen in the next last slide. So the job evaluation is basically measuring the value of a job, measuring the requirements of a job. That means whenever we are appointing a particular person for a financial analyst or the accountants in a particular positions, so at that particular time we are measuring the value of that particular job within the organizations. Okay, so whenever we are measuring the value or the requirements of this particular job within the organization, at that time it is called job evaluation. I mean, it is a particular terms that is giving us a sense of internal equity. That means how much important these work for the organization. If that is very critical, very important for the organization, we need to provide much amount for that particular job. And if it is less required, or if the supply of labors are very available within the recent market or within the society, then we might give him or her a congenial amount that is very convenient for him. Okay, so job evaluations will determine the pay rate for the employees. If the job is very valuable for the organizational point of view, we need to provide them a very required amount that is being possessed by the particular organizations in the other competing organizations as well. Number 3, what we are experiencing from that particular process, that is grouping the similar jobs into the pay grades. So after doing 2 sort of activities of salary survey and the job evaluation, then we need to group similar sort of jobs in a particular area so that we can develop the next stage, or we can proceed to the next stage for that particular activity. That means there might have 20 types of activities within the organizations, but there might have some similarity, there might have some closeness or proximity among the different sort of activities. So the activities which are very similar in nature, we need to categorize it into a unique platform, and we need to give a unique category name of that particular activities, so that we can develop a uniform compensation rate for that particular category. Okay, but if we try to deal with that particular issues 20 times, that will be very difficult for the HR departments to explore. So we need to bring it into the very flatter one. We will discuss about it into the next stage of our discussions, as we will have to go it one by one. Number 4 that we are experiencing, that is the wage curves. So wage curves, what does it mean? It means the pictorial presentation that shows the relationship between the organizational payment and the employee's contribution. I repeat, wage curve is basically the pictorial presentation that shows us the relationship between the organizational payment to the employee and employee's contribution towards the organizations. So we are coming to that particular parts right after the discussions of these particular slides. Number 5, that is fine tuning. In that particular area, we need to check whether we have done all the previous activities correctly or not. Okay, and we should keep, or we should consider about the flexibility in that particular area. So now we are going to one by one of these other activities so that we can have more understanding, more clear understanding about these other issues. As I have said, this is very important for our final exam. So we will go one by one for having a very clear understanding about these other issues. The first step, that was about salary survey. As I have said, it is basically external equity. So in external equity, what we need to do, we need to concentrate on comparing our payment with the competitors' payments. So that's what we are doing. But what are the uses of salary survey? I mean, what are the advantages of salary survey, or what particular informations the salary survey will give to our organizations? It will give us three different sort of informations, or three different sort of benefits for the organizations. First one, that is to price the benchmark jobs. I mean, what is the actual payment that should be given by the other organizations, or what should be the international standard of that jobs payment? We will be able to gather these informations from doing a salary survey. That means we will have the international standard about that particular jobs and the compensations of that particular jobs. Okay, so that's the basic advantages. And then what we are experiencing, that is about to market price wages for that jobs, market price. That means as we have said, that the benchmark will actually suggesting us about the international standard, but we need to gather information about the local standards, or about the local economy market standards. So we will have a clear idea about the local market range or the price level from doing a salary survey. So salary survey is very important for the organizations to gather informations about the current market price. Okay, and finally, it will help us to make decisions about the employees' benefits. I mean, whenever we will explore salary survey, we will be able to gather informations what others organization is paying to that particular job, what sort of services and benefits they are paying to their employees for doing that sort of activities. So these are the information that we will be able to collect by doing our salary survey. That was about our first steps. And in the first steps, we can have other discussions. That is, how can we get salary survey informations, or how can we do salary survey? What are the methods, I mean, for doing that salary survey? There are different sort of methods that we can apply for collecting job data, or the collecting compensation data for that particular post. We can go for self-conducted survey. I mean, we can go by our own for collecting those other informations. We can employ the consulting firms. We can get informations from the consulting firms. We can have ideas from the professional associations who are actually operating that sort of activities of monitoring compensation and benefits for the organizations. We can also take some sort of informations from the government agencies about what particular rules and regulations that are being stated by the government of our organizations, or for that particular job. So we will have a clear idea about it. And the final thing that we can explore, that is the very common one, the internet. But I can make you sure that the internet will not give us the actual informations always. Why? Because this is a very confidential information for the organizations. So organization might not share all these confidential informations to the outsiders. Okay, so we might get some sort of informations about the compensation rate of other organizations by their job analysis, because in job analysis sometimes they pronounce, or sometimes they show their actual payment for that particular job. Okay, so that's what we can collect informations if we want that we will go by internet or some other areas. So that was about our first steps. Now we are going to our second step. As I have said, job evaluation is the second step, which is very related with our internal equity. Okay, so we are actually measuring the value of a particular job. So whenever we are measuring the value of a particular job, we will be able to set the actual compensation rate for that particular post. Now the question is, what are the areas that we need to actually value, or what are the areas that we actually want for our organizations. These are like skills, these are like efforts, responsibility, and working conditions. So these are the actual compensable factors. I repeat, these are the actual compensable factors based on which the HR departments try to develop the compensation package for that employee or for that particular positions. So the skills, the responsibilities, I mean efforts, and more clearly the responsibilities and the working conditions. So these sort of activities or these sort of attributes actually give us the sense of job evaluation. So in job evaluations, we are trying to focus on skills, on the efforts, on the responsibilities that he needs to perform or she needs to perform, and finally, in which particular condition he needs to exist or she needs to exist. So these are the compensable factors that we are measuring for developing our compensation rate for that employee. Now the question is, as we have said that we need to concentrate on the skills, we need to concentrate on the efforts, responsibility, and the working conditions. Now the question is, how can we evaluate employees these sort of activities? I mean skills, working conditions, or some other experiences, or the job responsibility, or the efforts. How can we picturize it, or how can we get informations about it? Okay, we can evaluate the employee's performance, employee's skills by using these other methods. So these are the different sort of methods by which we can evaluate the value of a job. Now the question is, what are the connotations of these sort of methods? The first one that we are seeing from our slides, that is ranking method. So in that particular method, this is a very simplest forms of methods. We have also discussed it in the performance appraisal chapter, and whenever we have discussed it in performance appraisal chapter, we have said that based on the performance, we are just giving a rank from the top to the bottom. Who is actually showing the very best performance for the organization? He has been given, or she has been given, the position number 1, and based on that we are proceeding to the bottom line. So similarly, whenever we will evaluate the value of a job, we can actually follow this method. That means based on the difficulty, based on the skills requirement, based on the working conditions, we can make a rank from top to bottom, and we can consider, or we can give decisions about the pay packages based on these rankings. So this is the actual focus of our ranking method. The next step, that is job classification method. Job classification method is another very important method that we can use in job evaluation process. Okay, so in job classification method, what we are doing, we are trying to classify or categorize the different sort of jobs compared to other sort of jobs. That means in a particular organization, there might have different sort of activities, of production related activities, finance related activities, marketing related activities. Okay, it can be also happens in a particular shipbuilding or shipbreaking industry as well. So there are different sort of activities that needs to be operated for achieving the strategic aims. So what we are doing in that particular method, we are just comparing the category of jobs with the other category of jobs, and based on this category, we are selecting a particular pay scale. So that is the actual sense of job classification method. That means we are setting the pay package based on the category or based on the classifications. And number 3, what we are seeing from these slides, that is pointing or point method. Point method is actually giving us the sense of numerical judgment or the quantitative judgment. That means whenever we are ranking from top to bottom, and after being ranked all those activities, we are attaching some points or value or weights with that sort of ranks. At that time, we can decide very clearly about these particular activities. So that is the basic focus of our pointing method. That means we are keeping the record of all those activities by a rank, and with these ranks, we are attaching a numerical value. It can be like 1 to 10. And we might expose 10 to some sort of activities. We might expose or put 8 to some sort of activities, or we might even some sort of marks or the numerical points like 1 or 2. So these particular 10, 8 or 1 and 2 will give us the sense how much important this value or how much important this activity for that organizations. So this is the actual message of the pointing method. So by looking after the points or by looking after the numerical ones, we can decide about the importance of this job. So that is basically our pointing method. And the final thing of evaluating a job, that is factor comparison method. So in a particular job, whenever we are considering the factors related to that job, that is basically factor comparison method. Okay, so in a particular organizations, there are different sort of activities, and whenever we are developing the pay rate for a particular category, we are considering the factors related with it. So whenever we are considering the factors related to a faculty's job, this will not be same with the administrative job, or this will not be same with the other sort of jobs within the same organizations. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to focus on the related factors. I mean, the responsibility, the difficulty, the working condition, these are the factors. While we are considering these are the factors for evaluating a job, that is called factor comparison method. That means we need to compare this difficulty level with the other categories of difficulty level so that we can develop our compensation package for that particular employee. So that is the actual sense that we can collect from this slide about the methods of collecting data about job or evaluating the jobs. Now we are proceeding to our step number 3, that is grouping of jobs. So this is our third activity. While we have decided about the value of a job by the step number 2, then we need to concentrate on grouping these jobs. I mean, we need to bring the similar sort of jobs in a unique platform so that we can develop compensation package for each category. And we can do that sort of activity by following the similar sort of methods like pointing method, ranking method, or classification method. So in step number 2, we have said that we can evaluate the value of a job by using this method. And step number 3, we can also follow these methods, but the purpose will not be same with the step number 2 and step number 3. In step number 2, the purpose was to actually measure the value or importance of the job within the organization. But in step number 3, what we are doing, we are actually categorizing our similar sort of jobs in a uniform platform. Okay, so that we can develop pay packages in the next stage. So we can follow again the pointing method, ranking method, and the classification method. So in pointing method, we are just attaching the numerical value. In the ranking method, we are just develop a rank from top to bottom. And the final thing is classification method. That means we are just classifying the nature of the jobs and then we are categorizing it. Okay, so that's what's the step number 3 about the grouping of jobs. So in step number 4, we are experiencing the pricing of each pay grade, or we can say it wage curve. So I have said it a bit more about our that particular step number 4. That is, in step number 4, we need to develop wage curve. Now the question is, what is wage curve? Wage curve is basically, I have said that it is showing or it is suggesting us about the relationship between two particular variables. One is what we are paying to our employees and what employees are paying for the organization. So it is a kind of relationship that we can present by a pictorial presentations. So that's what the purpose of wage curve is. So we will have a very clear idea in our next slide about this particular wage curve. So this is a pictorial presentations from where we can assume the sense of our wage curve. So there are two axes. One is horizontal axis and the vertical axis. Okay, so we are experiencing a particular curve from this diagram, and what is actually suggesting us about the different blocks or different points, and these particular points or these other points is suggesting us about the relationship between these two variables. One is average pay rates and another is the contribution by the employees. So if the contribution is 100 from the horizontal axis, the amount will be you can have a look from these slides that you can picturize it on $4, or whenever the employees is providing 500 units of contributions at the very last ends to that horizontal axis, then we are paying $7.50 or $8 for that particular employee. I mean, whenever the employee is contributing or showing his productivity much towards the organizations, we are providing much amount to that particular employee. So that's the basic linkage that we can actually picturize by this wage curve. So wage curve is a pictorial presentation that is suggesting us about that particular idea. Okay, so in step number 4, we need to develop this sort of wage curve, and we need not to develop wage curves for each and every employee. What we need to do, we need to categorize the jobs in step number 3, and step number 4, depending on the category, we need to develop a wage curve. So that is our step number 4, and that is the step number 5 that we need to do at the very 11th hour of our journey of developing the pay package for the employees. So what do we understand by these terms? Fine-tuning periods, as I have said, that this is just a kind of checking whether we have done all sort of activities correctly or not. So how can we do that sort of activities? We should concentrate on the flexibility while developing the fine-tunings of the period. Now the question is, what does it actually mean to us? It actually means that while we are developing or while we are focusing on the wage curve, we need to concentrate that it should be very flexible, so that we can give some sort of extra benefits and service for our experienced employee, and based on their seniority, they should get a more return from the organizations, and it is a kind of correcting the previous activities if they have any sort of deviation. So this is basically fine-tuning periods. That means we are checking whether we have done all sort of activities correctly or not. So that's the basic issues by which we can conclude our process of developing periods. So I repeat, we will have to start our activities from the very beginning, that is salary survey. That means we need to compare our periods with the other organizations' periods. In step number 2, what we need to do, we need to evaluate the job. I mean, we need to measure the value of the job. In step number 3, we need to group similar sort of jobs in a single category or a uniform category. Then step number 4, depending on the category, we need to develop the wage curve. And finally, in step number 5, we need to check whether we have done all those activities correctly or not. Okay, so these are the 5 steps of our establishing pay packages. So in that particular slide, you can see how actually these sort of activities are being done by the HR departments of an organization. So HR departments do that sort of activities in a very simplified approach that we can see from these slides. That similarly, what we have given the theoretical sense, that first we need to conduct a salary survey. So they always try to look after that particular activity. Then they will evaluate the jobs. They will conduct 1 year or 1 year job appraisals. I mean, based on the appraising of the performance, then they need to develop the wage curve. And finally, they will have to do compiling the compensation budget for the upcoming years. Okay, so they need to check whether they have developed the compensation rate according to the organizational budget or not. So they need to check it in the fine-tuning stage. So that's how they can actually do that sort of activity. Okay, now the question is, we have developed the compensation package for the employees. Okay, so these are the discussions about the very common or general employees within the organizations. So whether we can satisfy all of our employees by these ways, the answer is very simple, that we cannot satisfy all of our employees by these ways, because we need to concentrate on some other specific service and benefits while developing compensation package for our managerial and professional jobs. That means they are the people who are residing in the top level management, they are very important for our organizations. All the employees are very important for the organizations, but as they are taking decisions regarding the strategic issues for the organization, and they are actually focusing or dreaming about the long-term sustainability of the organization, so they needs to pay some more extra service and benefits from the organization. So we need to first provide the basic pay, then we need to provide short-term incentives, we need to also ensure their long-term incentives, and finally what we need to do, we need to develop the executive benefits and the perks benefits. Now the question is, what is perks or executive benefits? So executive benefits makes it a bit different with the general employees. That means for the top level management or for the managerial or the professional job, we need to concentrate on that particular issues, that we need to provide some sort of extra benefits for the top level or the managerial level of people. And how can we do that? We can provide them some sort of extra benefits, like while they are traveling in abroad, we can ensure their airfare cost, or we can ensure their traveling cost, or we can make a trip for making a journey towards their expected destinations, or we can give them some sort of transportation or extra other benefits, so that they can feel that we are dreaming in a particular organizations, and the organization is also contributing towards our efforts. So that's the win-win situation that should be looked after by the HR departments, so that the top level management are very satisfied for doing that sort of activity within the organization. So these are the issues that we need to consider while developing pay package for our top level management employees. So this particular slide will give us a sense why this is very required, why we need to concentrate on the top level management's particular pay packages. Yes, we need to concentrate on them because they have a very considerable influence over the board of directors, and they will always have to deal with the complex sort of activities. I mean, they will have to participate in strategic decision making activities, so they will have to be paid a bit more compared to the other general employees, so that they cannot be taken by the other competing organizations, okay, because they will have the very confidential informations of the organization. So if these are leaked, then the organization will have to suffer more and more. So for that reasons, we will always have to consider about their issues. Now we are going to another very important part, that is about the competency based pay. So once upon a time, we only concentrate about the traditional based pay system. I mean, we try to develop a pay package for the employees, and after 1 year or 2 years, we will go for a review, and then we will make some changes with the traditional based pay policy. But the time has been changed. Now we need to concentrate on the competency based pay policy. Now that is the question, what does it actually mean, and what is the difference of competency based pay with the traditional based pay system? Competencies are actually focusing us about the knowledge, skills, and the behaviors required for that organization. And while we are developing our pay system based on these other issues, that is called competency based pay system. But in traditional based pay system, we are not concentrating in all those issues. We are just going for a preliminary interview, and we are just doing a test of that particular people to join in our organization, and we are just following the pay package that has been developed 20 years back. But now what we need to do, we need to concentrate on the productivity. We need to concentrate on the return that he is or she is providing towards the organization. And based on the return, we are providing the amount for that particular employee, or we are providing the service and benefits, I mean the compensation for that particular employee. So that is the basic sense of competency-based pay system. And in that particular pay system, we need to go into the very depth and the types of skills and the knowledge that is being required for the organization. If the particular employee can satisfy his areas of activities or his skills, if he can show these sort of skills required by the organization, then the organizations will also concentrate on their requirements or also on their service and benefits. So that is the basic sense of our competency based pay system. Now the question is, what are the uses of competency based pay system? I mean, how the employee or how the organizations benefited from this sort of competency based system. Yes, if the organization try to maintain this competency based pay system, it will help them to develop a high performance working system. In the very first chapter, I have said that high performance working system suggests that all the employees will work by their own. So there will be a self motivations from the employee's perspective. So it will also be ensured by the competency based pay system, because in competency based pay system, you are paying much amount based on their productivity. So while you are paying them based on their productivity, they will always try to ensure their productivity, and the overall environment of the organizations will be very high performing working system. So that's the actual benefit of competency based pay system. Another benefit of competency based pay system, that is strategic aims. As I have said, that organizations will always strive for strategic aims, and whenever the employees will come up with a greater productivity, that will help the organization to achieve their strategic aims. And the final thing that will be helped by the competency based pay system, that is the performance management. I mean, the employees might get their performance and it might be aligned with the organizational strategic aims by competency based pay systems. So these are the benefits that we can get by using or applying this competency based pay system. Okay. Now the question is how the organization do that, how the organization make it into their practice. Yes, first they need to do a system that defines the specific skill. I mean, for developing a competency based pay system, what they need to do, they first need to demonstrate the required skill for based on which they can say that these are the skills required by the organization, and these are the areas based on which we can say that these are the KPI or key performance indicator. Okay, so that the organizational employees can concentrate on those KPIs, key performance indicator, or the skills required by the organization, and they can contribute based on their KPI. Number two, that is a process for tying the person's pay to his skill or her skill. That means after demonstrating or after defining the required skill, then we need to develop the payment based on that skills. Okay, so the skilled people will get more return from the organization. So this is the second step that we need to consider in our practical life. Number three, what we need to do, we need to provide them training, because the person's coming up with a lot of talents from their educational institutions, but we need to adjust his merits or his talents with the organizational requirements, so that he can or she can put more productivity for the organization's requirements. So it is our step number three. And step number four, what we need to do, we need to develop a formal competency testing system. That means in that particular step, we need to develop a testing system by which we can test whether they are demonstrating their skills or not. And the final thing that we need to do, we need to design our works that lets the employees move among the jobs to permit work assignment flexibility. That means we need to keep some flexible areas or components within the overall process, so that the employees can make it adjustable with his requirements or with his human natures of activities. Okay, so that's how the thing happens into the practical life, and that is actually followed by the organizations in the HR fields. Now the question is, what are the pros and cons? Why we need to follow competency-based pay system? The pros will actually suggest us about these advantages, that it will always ensure the higher quality. Now the question is, what is quality? Quality is a kind of performance that is being required by the organization. That is actually quality. A set of performance that is expected by the organization from an employee. So the competency-based pay system will always ensure higher quality from the employees. How can it do that? it always does that sort of activities by ensuring the actual requirement of activities, by focusing on the actual requirement of his responsibilities. So whenever he will try to ensure his productivity, it will definitely ensure the quality for the organization. Number two, that is lower absenteeism. So whenever the organizations will give their payment based on the productivity, employees will feel that if we are absent, then how can we ensure our good productivity? So they will try to reduce their higher absenteeism. And another benefit that we can get from this competency-based pay system, that is fewer accidents. That means if we can ensure competency-based pay system, then the amount or the number of accidents that happens within the organizations will be very minimum. Why? Because the organizations will always think that if there might have any experience, it might lose my productivity. So they will try to concentrate on that particular issues, which will ultimately lead him or her towards the end of his purpose. And what are the cons or what are the disadvantages of this competency-based pay system? The very disadvantage of this particular paying system is that the thing is not very easy, because you are concentrating on the skills of different peoples. And how can you develop this competency-based pay system for different sort of peoples? So you need to again categorize the skills requirements. You need to categorize their responsibility requirements. You need to categorize their working conditions, and then you can decide about this competency-based pay system. So it is very difficult to execute sometimes, and it is very costly because there needs to have the third party to concentrate on that particular issues. The organization might not have this expertise, so they might need to hire the parties from the outside. So it is very expensive sometimes, and the complexity of the program and the uncertainty of the programs, whether it will actually operate or not. Okay, so these are the cons. As we know that every system will have some pros and cons, and these are some pros and cons of competency-based pay system. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to discuss about a very important part of compensations theory, that is broadbanding. Now the question is, what is broadbanding? Broadbanding is actually giving us the sense that if we can consolidate the salary grades and ranges into the fewer wide levels, then it will be very convenient for the organizations to develop the wage curve. I mean, if we can categorize 20 types of jobs in 5 different categories, then we need to concentrate on 5 different categories, not we need to concentrate on 20 types of jobs. That means if we can consolidate the different job grades into the very uniform platform, then it will be very convenient for us to decorate or to develop the wage curve. So that is the broadbanding. In our country, there are 16 sort of grades for the public administrations or public government job of people, okay, or the employees. So if the organizations or if the governmental organizations can bring it more congenial for all the grades, or if they can bring it to 8 or 10 grades, and depending on that, if they can develop their wage curves, that is the actual advantage of broadbanding concept. That means we are consolidating the overall pay grades into some few pay grades so that we can concentrate much more over that issues. So again, there will have some pros and cons of this particular concept. It will ensure the flexibility, and it will give supports and flatters the organizational hierarchy. So if we can concentrate on 15 or 16 particular grades or layers, then it will be very bureaucratic. But if we can concentrate on the broadbanding concept, then it will make our organizational hierarchy very flatter, and we can develop the wage curve very easily. So that is the actual sense of broadbanding. I mean, we are making the overall organizational activities in a very short network. We are bringing towards it. So that is the concept of our broadbanding. Okay. Another very important terms that we need to consider in our compensation areas, that is comparable worth. I mean, all the men and women, they need to be considered equally. And in our today's discussions, we have said that we always need to think about the equity, but it often sometimes that there are some sort of organizations that we experience who are actually paying their male counterparts a bit more comparing to their women counterparts. And in Japan, Japan is one of the largest economy of the world, but in their country, only 10% women counterparts are being experienced in the top level management. So which is not very good from our side. That we are also focusing on the gender discrimination issues. So it is also a concept of human resource management, as I have said in the very first class, that is equal employment opportunity. That means all the employees, whether he is male or female, they need to be treated equally. And the contribution of men and female are not same. Probably the female counterparts, they are not putting much time towards the organization because of their family activities, but they are ensuring their productivity. As much as they are passing time within the organization, they are ensuring their productivity. So that is the basic concept of comparable worth, that we need to concentrate on their actual feedback that is being paid by the female counterparts or the women within the organization, and we need to value it. We need to give value towards their contributions. So that is basically comparable worth. I mean, the contributions of the different peoples are not same. So based on their contribution, we need to provide them a very handsome amount. So that is the concept that is being actually performed by human resource departments, and they need to follow it. So that is comparable worth. And the basis of this comparable worth, that it always try to address the gender discrimination issues. And based on these gender discrimination issues, they always try to give the proper chance to all the male and female counterparts, so that they can expose their talents and they can expose their responsibilities, and they can adopt the newer sort of challenges for the organizational betterment. So that is the actual sense of our comparable worth. And who will actually do that sort of comparable worth? Yes, the employers. I mean, they will do that sort of activities, or they can also give that sort of activities to the HR departments. Or if not, then the employees will go to the courts, and there will have some discussions about these issues in the courts. So probably we are into the beginning of our journey. We are very closest to the end of our journey as well. So the last slide, that is suggesting us about the HRIS. As I have said in one of my class, that HRIS is basically human resource management or human resources information systems. Okay. So whenever we are doing our compensations pay packages activities by using the automated machines, or by using the manual, or by using the very technical or technological aspects, that is basically the kind of HRIS. Or we are collecting data, we are processing it, or we are giving feedbacks to the employees by using all those activities by the help of technology. That is the concept of human resource information system. So we can develop this compensation package by using our human resource information system. So if we can ensure these sort of activities by using human resource information system, then it will be very easy for us that we can actually show all the activities towards our organization and employees, so that they can feel in which particular areas they need to develop or they need to improve. Okay, so it is a very automated way of doing activities, and if we can ensure this sort of activities, it will help the long-term sustainability of the organization, and it will also help the employees to think about their betterment. So we can follow this sort of activities. Now we are going to the very first level of our journey, so that you can have a check the areas of our particular areas that we are going to focus on that particular chapter. So these are the areas that we need to focus. So you can see that in our today's class, what we have discussed about the very important concepts of the compensation. So after performance appraisal, then we need to think about the employees compensation issues. And they actually dream for it. They actually look after for that particular issues. So in that particular discussion sessions, we have discussed about the ways or the process by which we can develop the compensation package for our employees. We start our journey from the very beginning, that is salary survey, and we ends up our journey by fine-tuning pay rates. So these are the sort of activities by which we can ensure their happiness, by which we can ensure their expectations towards the organization. So that's what our discussions today. In the next class, what we will try to do, we will try to explain some sort of service and benefits that are being paid by the organizations for the employees. So that will be our chapter number 8. So that was the discussions for our today's session. So I hope you're very safety in life. So pray for us and have a good life.